Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're cracking open I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Now this book is kind of a modern classic, especially for people our age, millennials, and you'll see why pretty quickly. Sethi, he doesn't just throw a bunch of spreadsheets and stuff at you. He actually gets how we all think about money, and that's what makes his whole approach so refreshing. He's not saying you have to live like a monk or anything to get rich. It's more about building a rich life, not just a rich bank account, if that makes sense. But before we get into all that, let's talk about the guy behind it all, Ramit Sethi.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Sethi's background is in psychology, not finance. And I think that gives him a really interesting, a unique perspective, for sure. He understands that, a lot of times how we deal with money is more emotional than logical.
Totally. It's like he gets that we shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes without even realizing it, which is where this whole conscious spending thing comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's not about, depriving yourself or anything. It's about being more mindful about where your money's actually going.
Exactly. It's about making sure your spending is like, It's like, are you spending on the things you actually value? Like, for example, if traveling is super important to you, maybe you cut back on those daily takeout lunches and put that money towards plane tickets instead.
Okay, so let's say you've figured that part out, like what's really important to you? What's next? Well, Sethi's a huge believer in automation. He thinks we should set things up so that our finances, they basically take care of themselves, on autopilot.
Right. It's like
Uh,
you automate things in your life all the time, right?
yeah.
I mean, think about laundry. Think about the dishwasher. Even drive to your car has a lot of automation these days. So why not do the same for your finances?
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
Takes a lot of the mental stress away, for sure. And it helps you stay consistent, which is, that's super important.
I've actually, I've been automating some of my bills and savings lately. And honestly, it's been a game changer. Totally a game changer.
Yeah.
I'm definitely less stressed. And I'm actually saving way more than I used to.
That's
And
awesome.
I don't even have to think about it. It just kind of happens automatically.
That's the beauty of it. And speaking of taking the stress out of things, let's talk about investing for a minute.
Yeah.
Now, Sethi's not about chasing those, get-rich-quick schemes or anything like that. Nothing risky.
Right.
He's all about the slow and steady approach.
Slow and steady wins the race, as they say.
Exactly. Start early, stay
Yeah.
consistent, and focus on those low-cost index funds.
Like the kind of stuff Warren Buffett's always talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, and he actually goes deeper than just mentioning index funds. He compares different types of index funds, talks about active versus passive investing. He doesn't just scratch the surface.
So, wait. Are you saying I can build wealth without needing some fancy Wall Street guy managing my money? I'm in. But, okay, so here's where Sethi really throws a curveball. He actually encourages people to use credit cards,
He does, yeah.
but not in the way you might think, right?
Right. Definitely not in the way, a lot of people use them. It's all about being strategic with your credit cards.
Okay.
He shows you how to get the most out of those rewards programs, how to avoid those pesky fees, and the big one, how to build a really good credit score.
So it's kind of like
Yeah.
it's about using them as a tool, not letting them use you.
Exactly. In the right hands, they can be a really powerful tool. They can really help you build a good financial future.
For sure. And, speaking of taking control, Sethi believes that pretty much anyone can be a good negotiator.
Oh, yeah, he's big on that.
He's talking about negotiating salaries, bills, interest rates, just about anything involving money.
He doesn't just say, go ask for what you want. He gives you actual scripts, tactics, stuff like that to make negotiation less scary and more effective. I used one of his scripts to negotiate my cable bill a while back, and I saved a bunch of money each month.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was great.
See, that's what I love about this guy. He gives you the tools and steps to take action, not just, vague advice. It's like having a personal finance coach right there with you. But before we dive into his 6-week action plan, let's take a quick pause. We'll be right back.
It really is like having your own coach in your back pocket.
Exactly.
And speaking of coaching, right, let's dig into Sethi's 6-week action plan. This is where all the pieces really come together.
Yeah.
It's where he gives you that roadmap to actually put everything into action.
And that's what I really love about this book. It's not just theory, it's actually stuff you can do right away, immediately. Each week focuses on a different, specific area of your finances, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting about how he structures it?
What's that?
It's kind of like how athletes train.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't expect to run a marathon without a training plan, right?
Right.
Your finances are kind of the same way. Sethi breaks it down into like these training sessions.
I love that analogy. That's perfect. So, like, week one might be all about setting up your financial foundation. Week two, tackling your savings goals, something like that.
Exactly, exactly. And he gives you like really specific steps and resources for each week so you're never left wondering what to do.
That's so helpful. Okay, this is all great, but who's this book really for? Is it just for millennials like us? Or, like, who else would get a lot out of it?
Mm. I think, yeah, it's definitely super helpful for anyone who like gets intimidated by personal finance, like people who maybe didn't learn this stuff in school,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, totally. I remember trying to read those old school finance books, and it was like I needed a PhD in economics just to understand what they were talking about. Sethi actually makes it relatable.
He does. He really does. And it's not just about like managing your money and stuff. Sethi actually challenges you to think about like what does a rich life really mean to you?
That's what really resonated with me too. It's not just about like hoarding money, you know? It's about using your money to create the life you want, the life that aligns with your values, your goals.
Yeah, and he talks about ditching that whole scarcity mindset, embracing abundance instead,
Hmm.
believing that there's enough money out there for everyone, you know.
I love that.
You deserve your share, everyone does.
It's like a whole different way of thinking, right? Instead of I can't afford that, it's how can I make that happen?
You got it. That's the spirit. And like one thing he really emphasizes is the power of negotiation.
Oh yeah,
He even
negotiating.
tells this funny story about negotiating the price of a banana at a farmer's market just to prove his point.
No way, seriously.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But I guess it just goes to show you can negotiate pretty much anything, right?
Pretty much, if you have the right mindset and the right approach. And remember, it's not about being aggressive or trying to trick anyone. It's about advocating for yourself and finding solutions that work for everyone involved.
Totally. Okay, so let's say I've read the book, I've done everything he says in the 6-week plan. I'm feeling pretty good about my finances. What's next?
Well, I think it's important to remember this isn't a one-time fix. You know, it's about building a foundation, a solid financial foundation that's going to last.
It's like an ongoing thing, right? Our
Mhm.
needs and goals change over time, so we have to adjust.
For sure. Sethi encourages people to keep learning, keep exploring different financial tools and strategies as you go. It's all about staying curious, staying informed.
And let's be real, personal finance isn't always the most exciting topic, right?
Definitely not.
But Sethi makes it fun somehow.
He does. He really does. And that's so important because if you're engaged, if you're actually enjoying it, you're way more likely to stick with it.
Makes sense?
It becomes less about sacrifice and more about creating the life you actually want.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something that really stuck with me from the book. Sethi talks about defining what a rich life means to you personally.
That's such an important point. It's about moving beyond those like societal expectations of what success is supposed to look like. It's about figuring out what truly matters to you.
Exactly. For some people, it might be traveling the world. For others, it might be spending more time with family or, pursuing a creative passion.
And the cool thing is there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's all about consciously creating a life that makes you happy, a life that's in line with your values.
Well said. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up? You know what? Even if you think you're pretty good with money already, this book, it's still worth checking out. He has this way of explaining things that it just makes sense, you know?
He does, yeah. He cuts through all the BS and gets right to the point. And he makes it feel doable, not intimidating.
Yeah, he never talks down to you, even when it gets kind of complicated. Okay, so as we wrap up, I think it'd be helpful to go over those key takeaways one more time. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so first up, conscious spending. It's not about like being a cheapskate. It's about making sure your money is actually going towards the things you value. Spend on what matters, cut back on the stuff that doesn't.
Yep, and don't forget about automation. It can really, really help with that. Just set it and forget it.
Totally.
Less stress, more consistency.
Love it. Next, investing early. Sethi is all about those low-cost index funds, right? They're great for like pretty much everyone. When it comes to building wealth, the earlier you start, the better.
Absolutely. And hey, don't forget those credit cards. Use them strategically.
Right, strategically.
Get those rewards, build that credit score, and pay them off on time. Every time.
Okay, and then there's negotiation. Sethi believes anyone can be a good negotiator, and he gives you the tools to do it. Your salary, your bills, even that banana at the farmer's market. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want.
And I think the biggest takeaway from this book is figuring out what a rich life means to you. It's not all about how much money you have. It's about living a life you love, a life that's full of purpose.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so as we close out this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. What's one thing you can do today to start building that rich life? Maybe it's finally setting up that automatic savings transfer, or maybe it's grabbing a copy of this book.
Whatever it is, just remember, even small steps done consistently, they can make a huge difference over time. That first step is the most important one.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Until next time, happy investing.